How do I start my own business?
Being my own brand would be totally legit.
I want to be the next Gary Vee.
My dream is to be on Shark Tank.
I'm just gonna Google it.
I mean, I'm awesome at social media. What could go wrong?
Oh my God.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Learning Curves. We're here, another episode. I believe we're episode 9. Woohoo! Yeah, exciting. Getting through them. Today, I have a very exciting guest. I am completely excited to introduce you to him so you can hear his story. Mr. Brandon Lee.
How you doing?
Brandon is with Vigilant MMA. He is a sports promoter.
That's right.
I love that. I'm really into sports and always had a fascination with sports promoters. Brandon promotes boxers, MMA fighters, and kickboxing fighters, and jiu-jitsu, if I can say that right.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, and he started his company in 2019. Brandon was also in a really awful car accident a couple of years back, and he is paralyzed from his neck all the way down. And so he's going to tell us his story, how he made a comeback after that horrific accident, and talk about his courage and also his great company that he started. He's Vigilant MMA. He has 19 shows so far total. Is that correct?
19 in the book, 16 with Combat Quest, and 3 with our jiu-jitsu.
Great. And we're going to learn all about that from him today and hear his story, because it's just, I think it's something that we all need to listen to have courage and the strength and all the things that he's gone through. Is just incredible.
Thank you.
At CEA Marketing, we take your business, your passion, and your why, and we sell it. If you're unsure where to start marketing your company, CEA Marketing is here to help. Our team at CEA has tons of experience and top-notch training, which helps you take all the stress and confusion out of marketing your own business. After years of working with large companies like Pulte Homes, the Outback Bowl, and Metro Places, we guarantee the successful implementation of a marketing strategy. So, Brandon, can you tell us a little bit first about Vigilant MMA and explain kind of what it is, what you do as a sports promoter.
Okay, sure. So Vigilant MMA was basically my brainchild that I came up with after my car crash. I wanted to stay active in the sport. I was about 7 years post-injury, and I had moved back to Tampa. So I started contacting all the guys I used to train with, all the guys that I knew that were fighters in the area, and told them that I would manage them for free as long as I could build my portfolio through their hard work and blood, sweat, and tears. So I gave them free representation in return for having a portfolio of fighters. And I started contacting the other promoters around Florida, and I just came to find that these guys were just not, for the most part, just not upstanding people. And I felt like I could get into this industry. I could change the way that the fighters are treated, change the way that everything was being done, and improve the conditions for the fighters. And so it started with the first show that I was a matchmaker on, because you have to kind of work your way up. You can't just automatically be a promoter. Mm-hmm. So I worked my way up from being a manager to being a matchmaker to being a co-promoter, and then eventually being a promoter. And I just try to make sure that every show we provide everything that the fighters need, that we go above and beyond to take care of them, and that's how we've built our reputation over 3 years. And we fly in the best amateurs in the country. All of our champions are turning pro and finding success on the professional level, and we have them prepared by requesting all their paperwork in advance. We make sure that they follow all the hoops and the hurdles as if they were professionals. So we groom them for the professional process.
You had mentioned that a lot of the fighters weren't being treated very well. What was happening, and how did you solve that problem?
I mean, I certainly haven't solved it, but I feel like we definitely have upped the ante.
Okay.
For instance, myself, I can remember before I broke my neck, training or warming up out back behind a club near the dumpster. because there was no warm-up area. They would just throw us all in the back in the alley, and then the next two that got called were the next two up, and then the next two that got called. So I've warmed up next to dumpsters behind clubs, getting ready for fights. So we make sure that they have nice warm-up area. They have mats that they can stretch out and warm up on. We make sure that they have all of their necessary items, the tape, the gauze, the cornerman's gloves. They don't have to run out and go to Dick's at the last second to get something. They can focus totally on their preparation and on their competition. I've stayed in some really, really sketchy places as a fighter, going out of town, going out of city, out of state. The promoters will usually put you in the cheapest roach motel they can possibly find. I make sure that these guys are in a good place, that they're situated well, that it's near the facility. So if they have to Uber or anything, it's a very nominal cost. I just try to make sure and go above and beyond every time. We make sure we provide all their gear. We buy high-end quality gear and provide that for them so they don't have to worry about bringing their gloves or their MMA stuff or their shin guards or their headgear. We have all that stuff for them.
That's great. Yeah, it's important that they have a comfortable place to stay, especially after a hard fight at night. They're probably not feeling the best, and being comfortable after that and getting good rest, I'm sure, is important for them.
Yeah, man. In fact, a funny story is I remember a guy, the very first show I was a matchmaker. I wasn't the promoter. I was just a matchmaker. And this poor kid, he got leg kicked by a Muay Thai world champion so many times. The guy kicked him in the legs that he finally gave up. He couldn't stand back up anymore. He just tapped the mat. He couldn't even get back up. And the promoter would not give him an extra night at the hotel. And I kept telling the promoter, bro, this kid went in there and got kicked to death for you. Pay for another night of his hotel. He wouldn't do it. The kid tried to drive home and had to stop and get a hotel himself.
Oh, wow.
So it's just, seeing so many stories like that, first as a fighter, then as a manager, then as a coach. I just made up my mind that I was going to create a company that was going to take care of the fighters and give them a comfortable atmosphere while they're there with us.
That's important. That's great that you're doing that for them. One question I have here is, how does Vigilant MMA compare to the UCF?
The UFC.
Oh, sorry. UFC. I'm dyslexic, so I'm going to go backwards.
No worries. But, we are a grain of sand on the beach compared to UFC. That's a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. But they are focused strictly on mixed martial arts on the professional level. Vigilant is an amateur show, and we're a hybrid combat sports show. So we have amateur boxing, amateur kickboxing, amateur MMA, amateur Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and amateur combat Jiu-Jitsu. So basically the 5 different styles of combat sports that you would normally go out to watch, we just have them all under one banner. So that's why we call it Combat Quest. So it's a little bit of everything, one ring, one night. So you get to see all the different styles.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. We're trying to create a different fan. You see, you have a lot of people that are strictly boxing fans, or they're strictly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fans, or they're strictly MMA fans. We want to create fans out of those guys that will want to see them all. So if a BJJ guy who only watches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes to the event, he sees a kickboxing match he really likes. Maybe now the next time there's a kickboxing show in town, he'll go to the kickboxing show. See, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take these fans that are only specific to one and make them more of hybrid fans to the whole conglomerate.
Oh, that's nice. That's smart.
Well, and it only helps.
Yeah.
It only helps the other promoters in the area. There's promoters here that only do kickboxing. Well, they don't really have a very good turnout. But if we can take fans that normally only watch BJJ or MMA and turn them into kickboxing fans with good kickboxing matches, then that's going to help the other promoters in the area. Sadly, most of them don't see that. Most of them don't like me. They don't like the fact that a disabled guy's down here, putting on a good show. But sorry about you.
That's not right.
I didn't get into this to make friends. So
And you were a fighter yourself, right? You were a professional.
not a professional, but yeah, I had
Kickboxing.
Yep, I had 49 amateur fights between boxing, kickboxing, and MMA, and I was just about to go pro in 2011. I had one more amateur kickboxing. I was going to defend my national title kickboxing in Baltimore, and then I was going pro. I already had a pro boxing match set up.
Oh, wow. Exciting.
But I never got to that point. About 2 weeks before that tournament where I was going to defend my national title, I got into a car wreck. It was not an accident. It was a car crash, single car. My girlfriend at the time, she got upset that I was going to break up with her, and I was telling her that we were done and it was over. So she looked me in the eyes with really big eyes, and she said, "Oh, we're done?" And I said, "Yeah, we're done." And she goes, "Okay," floored it, and it took us off the road into the trees at about 80 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember every bit of the crash. I remember hitting the tree. I remember spinning around. I remember the car rolling. I remember I had my hand up here. You know this thing in the door, it's called the oh shit handle, right?
Yeah.
You know, I had that, and then I had my hand on the center console. I've been, unfortunately, in many near-death experiences. I've been in a motorcycle crash. I've been gunshot very close to me, at me. You know, I've been through many things. So things slow down for me.
Right.
I remember the car flipping over, and in slow motion, I thought to myself, I saw the way the roof was caving in because it was rolling over and over, and I thought to myself, I don't want my hand to get chopped off. There's an MMA fighter named Knuckle that he only has one hand, and he's in the second biggest organization in the world, Bellator, with one hand, fighting with one hand.
Fighting with one hand.
Yes, professionally. Now, I thought to myself in my head, I don't want to end up like Knuckle and have to try to fight with one hand. So I let go of the center console. I let go of the oh shit handle. And I thought to myself, well, God, you know, take the wheel. And I felt like God told me, you know, drunk people survive these kind of situations by going limp. So just go limp. So that's what I did. I just let go of everything and I went limp. And my body went this way. My body went back the other way. And then when my body came back down this way, my neck broke on the headrest of the car. The car was finishing rolling, and me and her both fell to the bottom side of the car, and my neck broke on the headrest. She climbed out, opened the door, got out of the car, and that was it.
Wow.
Yep.
Then what she called 911?
Well, I'm sure, you know, and she had made up a story already. In fact, as the ambulance and the fire trucks and everybody was pulling up, she ran up to the car. And not only did I break my neck, I broke all my ribs and I punctured my lung. So this was about as loud as I could get for about 6 months after my crash. I had to go to speech therapy just to learn how to put the bass back into my voice and talk again.
Wow.
So when she ran up to the car, my ribs were already broken. My lung was already punctured. And I was in the car going, help, help, somebody help me, help. Why can't anyone hear me, help? And I was panicking. So she ran up to the car and she said, hey, babe, the cops are here. Remember, a dog ran out in front of the car. Can you hear me? A dog ran out in front of the car. And then she got up and ran off. And I stopped and I thought to myself, you selfish bitch. You're over here planning how to cover your ass while I'm still in the car, for all you know, unconscious or dead because I'm not responding. And you're more worried about covering your butt than you are if I'm even alive or anything in the car. And that actually really calmed me down. It made me very serene. It made me think and introspect really deeply. And having been in martial arts and fighting and combat stuff my whole life, I centered my chi. I felt like I got my center really, really strong. And then when I came out of it, I felt like, okay, I don't feel any pain. I don't see any blood. I must be okay. I thought once again, you know, like I said, I've been through many near-death experiences. I thought once again, I've gotten through this somehow unscathed. How wrong I was, you know. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And I had to wait for them to get there, get a tow truck, pull the car out of the woods because it was about 30 feet into the woods. They had to pull the car out of the woods, cut the roof off, pull me out of the car and put me onto a stretcher. And it was at that point that they realized that, you know, obviously I'm completely paralyzed because I couldn't do anything. I could look at them. I could whisper slowly. But that was it. That was my eyeballs and my mouth. And for about 11 months after my crash, that's all I had. My eyeballs and my mouth. Nothing else in my whole body.
Were you able to tell the police the true story of what happened, and hopefully she went to jail?
No.
For trying to kill you?
No, none of that. For about the first 6 months, you got to understand, you're heavily sedated. I had, you know, feeding tubes down my throat that I would rip out, and then they would sedate me, and I would be out for days, and then they would put it all back down in my throat and bring me back to. And Luckily, I did not have to have the tracheotomy. It was just a blessing that they didn't trach me at the scene, because with one lung down and paralyzed, it's almost standard that they trach you, but they didn't. Thank you, God. But it was 6 months before things started to just be able to lift my left arm, just a little lift. My right arm, I could just roll it over a little bit. It's still to this day. I mean, when I try to tell my hand to open, that's what it does. I have to really think just to get that, and then it closes back up. You know, there's still a lot of things that don't function anywhere near, normal, but you have to learn how to adapt. And that's kind of why I'm here today, is to help people to understand that no matter what the circumstances, no matter what anyone tells you, it's up to you. It's up to you to put in the work, put in the time, keep your faith in God, and trust the process.
Yeah, because they told you that you weren't going to be able to move at all, right?
Correct. 6 weeks after my surgery, the 2 neurosurgeons that worked on me, Dr. Valley, Dr. Van Loveren, thank you guys. The 2 surgeons that worked on me, they came in and they told my parents, look, he's not moved anything in his entire body for 6 weeks. Let's just face the facts. He's going to be in a hospital bed for the rest of his life. I remember the doctor saying he'll have limited arm movement, and he's going to be in the wheelchair with the straw in his mouth. It's called a sip and puff. And you blow into it, and it can go, and then you suck into it, and it'll stop. And if you look to the left, it goes to the left. If you look to the right, it goes. And they tell me this is where you're going to be for the rest of your life. Now imagine, 6 weeks prior to this, I was one of the top. I was a national champion kickboxer, top-ranked boxer, up-and-coming MMA fighter. And then now, 6 weeks later, they're telling me you're never going to move your whole body. People are going to be wiping your butt, feeding you, brushing your teeth, bathing you, dressing you for the rest of your life. It was the most humbling, just catastrophic thing you could possibly imagine to be told. And at first, all I wanted to do was die. I chased off some good friends. I've always been very blessed in my life. I've had a lot of good friends. I chased off a bunch of my friends from the hospital because I kept begging people to kill me. I kept begging my friends to put poison in my food, to put bleach in my food, because I didn't want to live like this. I don't want to watch my mom, who's a 2-time cancer survivor, sit in the hospital struggling to roll me over to wipe my butt. I'm 32 years old. I put my mom through hell when I was a teenager. She didn't deserve that twice, So
Right.
I just wanted to die. I really did. I just wanted to die. I was always thinking of how I could accomplish it myself. I used to have them put me in my wheelchair, and I would put that stupid straw in my mouth, and I would sip and puff my way out to the elevator, and I would get my knuckle up on that button, and I would get myself outside. And they would come and find me and be so mad at me that I had gotten myself outside by myself. But my plan was, honest to God, man, I wanted to fling myself into the water because I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live like that. I did not want to be like that. And it took one night laying in the hospital bed. Everybody had left. I would never let anyone see me cry. I would never let anyone see me upset. I would always just, smile for everybody. But when everyone would leave, I would get real sad and I would get real depressed. And I was laying there one night, and I don't know, if you're a believer, but I'm very much a God believer. God went into my heart when I was 5 years old. I've been blessed, and I've lived a crazy life, but I've lived a blessed life. And I was laying there, and I started cursing God, and I started blaming God for everything that had happened to me. And I was like, F you, God. How are you going to keep me alive to live like this, man? So my mom's wiping my butt, and people are bathing me and brushing my teeth, F you, man. I hate you, God. I hate you. I hate you. And I'd never spoke like this ever in my life. I felt the presence of the Lord come down into the room. Now, I'm not talking an old white man with a gray beard and a big staff and a robe. I'm not talking that. I felt this warmth and this heat and this energy come down into the room, and I'm still crying down my face. And in my head, I had this conversation with a voice I had never heard before, yet was eerily familiar to me. And I knew as soon as he spoke, I just knew that it was God. I just knew that it was a creator. And in this very deep, majestic voice, he goes, "So you're just going to give up?" And I'm like, "No," still crying. And he goes, "Okay, well, all I'm hearing is a quitter. Brandon, are you a quitter?" And I'm like, he said my name. Like, no, I'm not a quitter. He goes, okay, I can work with that. So you want to walk again? And now remember, this was in my head. Nothing in my whole body worked. And in my head, I said, no, I want to fight again. I brought my hands up like this, but it was in my brain. I couldn't do it in real life. And he goes, we'll see. And then he was gone. Now, I laid there and I meditated and I prayed and I thought on that for hours on end. And at the end of it, I came to realize that, me talking like that and me wanting to give up was not the direction that God wanted me to go in. And he had to come down and, reconvene for me and point me in a new way, in a new direction. And that's ever since that day, it has been foot on the gas, no brake, as hard as I can to try to overcome this injury.
And now you're where you are now compared to then. What are you able to do?
Well, I'm better than, thank God, 99.9% of people with my injury. I drove here today in my car, no hand controls. I have 2 vehicles. I have a 4Runner that's covered with my Vigilant logos. If anybody sees me out there, I'm out there every day in that thing. I have, nice big wheels, and it's a real attention getter. Then I have my little Toyota Corolla, and I live on my own, take care of myself, run my businesses. I conduct as if I'm not injured. I'm slow. I'm late. I was late here today. I'm late a lot of places. Things come about that I'm not prepared for. I fall down, and it may take me 10 minutes to get back up, but I don't let anything stop me. One day I'm going to see the girl that did this to me again. One day we're going to cross paths, and I want to be able to look her in the face and say, you can break my neck. You can paralyze me from the neck down, but you can't stop me. That's one of my second biggest driving force is that moment, is for that moment, for down the road when my business is fully, really successful. We're worldwide. We're doing things. I want to be able to look her in the face and say that, you know what I mean? Like, you can literally paralyze me from the neck down, but you can't stop me.
Yeah, that's a good message for her, for sure. It's actually nice, that you don't want to do something
Probably
else.
probably a bit nicer than
think I
people were
would be
thinking.
that nice if it was me.
Well,
I'm sure she's inside probably dealing with that guilt every single day.
Not at all. Not at all.
Think
Not at
so?
all. No, not at all. I know too much, but the thing is that for years I blamed her, right? That's the easy out, is to blame her for the crash because she wrecked the car. It was just us in the car. There wasn't no dog. There was no other cars.
So she tried to kill both of you.
Absolutely. She definitely tried to kill us both. However, about 5 years into my injury, I was sitting by myself in Alabama up on a hill next to the Vulcan statue that's up there in Birmingham, and just looking down at the city and trying to introspect on how I'd gotten myself into this position. It was like, dude, how did you go, how did you get yourself here? And I automatically, effing blaming her, it came to me. I realized that really all of this was my fault. See, the choices that I made years before I met her that led me down the path to meeting her, the years of me and her fighting and arguing and me not listening to my family, not listening to my friends, losing friends because I kept trying to save that relationship. It was my fault that I got into the wreck. It was my fault that I broke my neck. And when I accepted accountability for my poor choices, it made it so much easier to move forward. Because prior to that moment, believe me, every day of my life, I was like, when I see this girl, I sit, I don't care what's going on, I don't care who's there, it's going down, for what she did to me, for destroying my career.
Right.
But I don't even think about it or look at it that way anymore, because truly, as a man, it's my fault. I stuck around a girl that was abusive towards me, verbally and physically, mentally and emotionally and psychologically. I chose to keep going back when my friends and my family were saying, Brandon, this girl's bad for you. You've got to get away from her. My MMA coach, we just spoke the other night. We hadn't spoken in a while. We just spoke the other night. And he remembers the day before my wreck when I was on the bicycle after practice was over. Everyone had left the gym, and I'm in the corner of the gym on a bicycle. And he comes up to me. He's like, bro, are you not exhausted? We've been here for 3.5 hours. And I was like, yeah, I'm exhausted. And he's like, well, what are you doing? I was like, bro, I don't want to go home, man. He's like, what do you mean you don't want to go home? I was like, bro, my girl is tripping, it's always a battle, always something going on. And he's like, Brandon, That's never going to work. You're never going to get anywhere in life if you don't even want to go home after you've killed yourself in your training. He's like, think about it. This is obviously not a good situation. You've got to get out of it. 2 days later, my neck is broken. I'm in the hospital, and my life is forever changed.
Wow. I mean, that takes a lot of, for you doing that and accepting responsibility for something that somebody else did. I mean, you could be mad at her for the rest of your life, and being angry doesn't really solve anything. It's very unhealthy for somebody. So it sounds like you were able to move on and live a much better life for yourself by you taking that responsibility, because the anger is gone, and it allows you to open up and focus on all the things that really matter.
For sure. I mean, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Out of sight, out of mind for sure. But, my daughter's 14 years old. She's just getting into her life. She's just starting to figure out who she is. She's just starting to figure out who other people are.
Yeah.
Because for most of her life, it's just been parents, grandparents, sister, cousins, aunts, and uncles, She's starting to see life. And I want her to see that her choices are what's going to dictate her life. Choices that she makes now have ripple effects for the rest of her life. Some of the motivational speaking I've done since my injury, I always make that an integral point of all my speeches, is that our choices are like throwing a stone in the water, and they ripple out in all directions. And you don't know how far that ripple is going to go. Just like the choices that you make, you don't know how they're going to affect you. It can be a year down the road. It can be a day down the road. It can be 10 years down the road. Mm-hmm. You don't know how the choices that you make are going to affect you. And that's why every choice you make, you better think it through. You better think about the pros and the cons and the consequences and really evaluate, because if you just ho-hum through life, bad things happen. Yeah. Bad things come, I mean, that my car crash was not a result of us fighting and arguing that day. My car crash was a result of me 7 or 8 years of bad decision making, bad friends that led me to a bad girl, that led me to a bad relationship, that, and I chose to stay on that course. Mm-hmm. So now I have to, not reap the benefits, but I have to stay the course. I have to play this out. And I don't think I was on the path that God wanted me on. Like I said, God went into my heart when I was 5 years old. I was blessed. I felt it in the pew of the church in Summerton, Alabama. And he's been with me my whole life. I had gotten way off of path. I had gotten way off of where he wanted me. And he had to allow me to make the bad decision to get my neck broken to straighten my path back out so that I could be a good example to her. Because if I hadn't broken my neck, I probably wouldn't be nearly the person that I am today.
Right.
Wow. Just being honest.
It's interesting. The name of this podcast is called Learning Curves, and I guess you had a learning curve for sure.
Ooh-wee. It was like a Pythagorean theorem.
I think you win the medal for the learning curve of the year. Wow, that's quite the story. And that led you into what you're doing right now and how you got involved, the reason you decided to do the Vigilant MMA.
Right. I mean, when I figured out that I wasn't ever going to fight again, I still have this outside hope and prayer that through the technological advances and the scientific advances that are going on now, I still have the hope that maybe, God willing, one day I see guys in their 50s coming back and fighting now. So I'm like, man, if I put forth work for another 10 years, who knows where the technology will be? I'll be 50. I'll get back in there and fight somebody quick. In fact, I got a few people in mind I would love to take in there, starting with your ex-stepfather. But that's a whole nother story. But, I kind of realized and accepted the fact that as hard as I work, that's probably out of reach, And when you come to realize that, I was like, all right, I still want to be heavily involved in the sport. I love all aspects of combat sports. So I started my own company. And at first, my stepdad was the promoter, and I was the matchmaker. Mm-hmm. I was just putting together the fights, and he was the promoter with all the responsibility and stuff. After our third show, it just wasn't making any money, and he decided he was going to bow out. The other two partners we had, they bowed out, and it was either just going to fizzle and fall apart, mm-hmm. and then me take my skill as a matchmaker and go make someone else a bunch of money, or I keep it going and just do it all myself. And so ever since Combat Quest 4, I've been doing it all myself. And now we're on Combat Quest 17 coming up next Sunday, February 6th at the Dallas Bull from 1 to 5.
I love that. That's a whole thing of being fearless. Don't ever give up on your dream. You didn't give up. You kept it going even after other people didn't think it was going to work, and you stayed with it. And now look at it.
It's been crazy how many of the other
Yeah,
people,
I love
though,
it.
in the industry hate on us. It's amazing to me how much I see that people send me, because I won't get into social media confrontations with people because I can't knock their teeth out anymore. So, like, for me, I'm not going to sit and argue and go back and forth. And people post bad things about me, about my business, and then other people will screenshot it and send it to me, trying to instigate and trying to perpetuate problems. I ignore all that. To me, I'm an old school dude. I'm from the 90s and the 80s. If we got a problem, I'll show up at your job or your house, and then we're going to sort it out right there. But I can't do that anymore physically, so I just stay away from all that because there's so much social media crap that goes on and trash talking that goes on.
Yeah, people on social are mean, and especially when they make comments about that, what they really are is they don't have self-confidence in themselves, and therefore they feel like they need to, do that to somebody else to make themselves feel better.
Yeah, we call them keyboard warriors.
Yes. It's all about them, not about the other person they're attacking.
So I'm not so much in like the social media feed as much, Facebook and Instagram. You don't catch me going through the feed too much. I post for our events, for the fights that are going on, things of that. I post other fighters' stuff. Some of them, people, they get on me about it. They're like, "Oh, why do you repost for this guy?" Or why do you Bro, I don't care about the other promotions. I don't care about the other promoters. I care about the fighters. From day one, my thing is the fighters. There's a promotion here in Tampa. I'll let it remain nameless. Their matchmaker reached out to me and said, "Brandon, can you help me? I'm having trouble with these fights, man. I got to get this. I helped him. He works for my competition. The guy who owns that company says terrible things about me, about my disability, all the time. I don't care. I got four local fighters opportunities. So to me, I could care less if the other guy makes money. I don't care if his show does good, if he makes money. That doesn't matter to me. I got 4 local fighters opportunities to compete. And that's why I got into it in the beginning, and that's why I'm going to be throughout is the uniform. I'm going to be here to help these guys find opportunities.
Wow. I love that. What are your plans for the next 5 years? How are you going to make this Vigilant MMA grow?
I have actually very big plans for Vigilant MMA. Vigilant MMA is the conglomerate. Vigilant MMA is the whole production. Within Vigilant MMA, we have Combat Quest. That is our hybrid sports show where we do the boxing, the kickboxing, the MMA, and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I will make that show the best amateur show in the United States. I will make that show where all the amateurs want to come to win a title before they go pro within the next 5 years. We also have another show called CQ17. See, I took the C from combat, the Q from quest, and the jiu-jitsu, and it kind of rhymes, CQ17. And we do all Brazilian jiu-jitsu and combat jiu-jitsu matches on that show. Other promotions have bit off of that, and they are doing extremely well with it. I kind of let it fade off to the side when I was focusing on Combat Quest. This year, we're going to get it back really, really pumping and going. So I'm going to have both of those promotions really working. Combat Quest on a national level, CQ Jitsu more on a local, regional level. My business partner and I that I've teamed up with this year, we're going to start a pro series, and we're going to do something that nobody else does. Professional boxing, professional kickboxing, and professional MMA all under one roof.
Wow.
See, boxing promoters are in one division, kickboxing promoters do another, and MMA does another. None of these guys do it all under one. And I feel like while it will cost more money with the commission, it's still, I think, something that can be successful, and we start bridging the gap. You take boxing fans and turn them into kickboxing fans. Kickboxing fans turn them into MMA fans. MMA fans turn them into boxing and kickboxing fans. See, it becomes, it's cyclical, and it works for everybody.
Yeah.
I wish the other promoters could get on board with this and we could all work together. We could all schedule together. We could all promote each other's events at each other's events. I invite most of the other promoters to come and canvas my show, hit the parking lot, talk to the people when they come out. I want fight fans to be entertained. I don't have to compete with the other guys.
Yeah, I love that approach. Is there a reason why the other promoters don't want to do that?
Greedy.
Yeah.
Greedy. And they don't want a cripple guy doing a better job than they're doing because most of them have been here a lot longer than me. So they feel like, they give the minimal effort, they put the minimal money, and they want the maximum return out of it.
Right.
Me, I make sure I put the most into it. I put more money into my production crew, into my cameras and stuff, more money into that than most of these guys do in their budget. But I make sure that we're on television. We have everything professional looking because, like I said, I'm going to make Combat Quest the #1 amateur stop in the whole country within the next 3 to 5 years. And in the process, start taking our amateurs, turning them pro with our pro show, and then building them up to get them ready for UFC, for Bellator, for PFL, for all these professional organizations that are out there in the big leagues.
I think you're going to make that happen.
That's
Pretty sure about that.
I mean, like I said, you could break my neck, but you can't stop me.
No, I love that. And I think once you start doing that, a lot of those promoters will maybe start seeing your way at some point.
Well, I mean, I now work for two other Florida promoters. I do their matchmaking for 2 guys. I'm the matchmaker for a professional organization out of South Carolina as well. So they're starting to come around. They're starting to realize, and I don't talk bad about any of the other guys. I make a little sideways comment here or there, but I'm not telling you who it is, So I don't badmouth any of these guys. Most of all of them reach out to me on back channels for assistance. I give it to them because I want to help fighters find opportunities. To me, it's just way more important than any one fight or any one show. Because as a fighter, I remember how hard it is to find a fair fight, to find a fair opportunity. I can't tell you how many times I went to the weigh-ins and not only did my opponent not show up, but the promoter switched it, gave me another guy who's, I fought a guy one time. I was 3-3 as a kickboxer. I started 1-3, but I was 3-3 as a kickboxer. I fought a guy that was 18-0. Main event, he was 18-0 with 17 knockouts. Well, guess what? He was 19-0. Still, I'd only had 17 knockouts. He didn't knock me out, but he beat the crap out of me for 3 rounds, man. That was terrible. I had my pregnant fiance in the crowd. All my fraternity brothers drove down from college. That was a rough night, man. Just took a beating in the main event. But, that's because the promoter switched the fighter on me literally at the weigh-in. So my guys know 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month in advance who they're fighting. If their opponent falls out, they know. I'm not hiding it from these guys. I don't wait and switch the opponent on them last second. They know who they're fighting. They know everything I know about them. And like I said, these are the differences between me and the other guys.
Yeah, you need time to prepare and maybe watch some tape, or I don't know if they do that or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To see how they fight, and otherwise you're not prepared, and
now there's some
not a good thing
teams
to do to somebody, maybe more injuries because of it.
There's some teams that they'll fight anybody. There's some teams that they don't care. They're like, oh, just send us who we're fighting. We don't care. And on the amateur level, that's really how you should be. You want to fight the best. You want to fight the toughest competition because when you go pro, your record starts back over at 0.
Yeah.
And if you're battle tested as an amateur, you're going to be a lot more successful as a pro. If you go 8-0, but you don't fight anybody, all your opponents had losing records or their debuts themselves, you haven't really done anything. And you're going to find when you turn pro, probably going to get your butt kicked.
Yeah.
So we work really hard not to let anybody turn pro that isn't ready. I get into a lot of heated conversations with coaches and fighters because, I got 5 fights. I'm 4-1. I'm going pro. Son, relax. You're 4-1, but your opponent's combined records is 6-26. So let's get a couple more fights in. Let's fight some guys that are 4-1. Let's do that a couple of times, and then you'll be ready to make that jump to the pros. Yeah. But these guys see a quick buck. Somebody throws $1,000 at them to turn pro and fight. And they'll run for it 99 times out of 100, unfortunately. I was at first a big fan of the bare knuckle because before I got into combat sports, I was street fighting all the time. So I like the idea of the whole bare knuckle thing that's really, really blown up here, professional bare knuckle fighting. However, as a promoter and as somebody that builds these guys up from amateurs, it's very brutal. It's very, very.
Seems like it.
Dude,
How long does a bare knuckle fighter actually last before he breaks his fingers and hands so many times that he can no longer do it?
Not very long. The shelf life on a bare knuckle fighter can't be 2 years, maybe. You know, they just canceled a fight.
Why would they want to do it then?
They get paid a lot better than most.
Yeah.
Yep. All your regional boxers, your regional MMA guys, they don't make squat. You know, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500.
How much does a bare knuckle fighter make?
Starting from what I hear, starting around 5,000 up to 50 and 75,000.
Well, that's worth losing your hands over.
I mean, listen, one of my good friends, David Mundell, he's a pro fighter here in Clearwater, actually, at Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Clearwater, right? He's 10-6 pro MMA, fought on Bellator, which is like the second biggest organization. He went over to bare knuckle, making good money. Ended up with, I think he's 4-1 now. His only loss was Hector Lombard, who was a UFC superstar, main event, you know. I saw him after that fight, and he came up to the table that we were at. Both of his fists looked like he had softballs in them, swollen, top and bottom. It looked like he had 2 softballs in his hands from busting the other guy up. So it wasn't that his face was that busted up. It was that his hands were that messed up. You see, out here in the street, you get into a street fight with somebody. They're not trained in fighting. They're not trained in punching. They're not trained in cardio. That street fight's going to go for 30 seconds or a minute, and both y'all are winded as hell.
Yeah.
In bare knuckle, you have professional fighters that are trained, that know what they're doing, that know how to punch, that have the cardio. They stick out 5 rounds sometimes. 5 3-minute rounds, that's 15 minutes of fist fighting each other. I mean, dude, those guys come out of there and their faces look like they got hit with baseball bats.
I bet.
You know, it takes them 6 months sometimes to come back.
Yeah.
A fighter that we were looking to match named Francesco Ricci, he went ahead and fought bare knuckle right before our last global show, and he got hit in the throat in the first round, took a beating. His coach almost threw in the towel. He's a crazy Italian, and he's like, nope, I don't quit. I'm not quitting no matter what. Goes back in there, beats the crap out of the dude in the second round, knocks the dude unconscious in the third round. I mean, sleeping, out cold. After the fight, he's like, man, I'm not feeling good. There's something in my throat. I'm not feeling good. Turns out he had busted his trachea, and if he hadn't gone to the emergency room when he did, he would have died. Wow. He would have died, you know? That's how dangerous that sport is. So I'm no longer a fan of the bare knuckle, man. I don't think it's good for the fighters. I mean, if you've already fought, you've had your heyday, and you're just trying to make a quick buck at the end of your career, that's kind of one thing. But to see these young guys getting into it, turning professional, doing bare knuckle, man, you're risking everything because your fists are how you make your money, you know. And if your face is all cut up, you're gonna constantly have cuts and bleeding, and you're not gonna be able to compete. Yeah. So it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Nope, doesn't make any sense to me either.
You wouldn't get in there and do bare knuckle?
No.
There's
I
some
like
girls,
my hands too much.
You know, there was a blonde-headed
Plus I don't
girl.
want arthritis and all the things that's going to come along with that
Right,
when you get
exactly.
older.
Oh my gosh, there was a beautiful blonde-headed girl from the UFC. You remind me of named Paige Van Zandt, and she moved over to bare knuckle. And then they brought in another really beautiful Hawaiian girl named Rachel Ostovich, and they fought bare knuckle. Man, it was one of the best fights you'll ever see. But these two beautiful girls, by the third round, were just red all over their face. It didn't even look like the same people after the fight.
Probably not so beautiful after that.
Yeek.
I know, that's crazy. Wow. It'd be fun to come watch one of your shows sometimes. I guess
come out.
You have the one coming up, you said, in Brandon at the Bowl, right?
Yep, the Dallas Bull, one of Tampa's landmarks, all-time landmarks. I got really lucky. I got in there and talked to one of the head guys, and they let us do shows there on Sundays. We couldn't get any other day of the week, but we got Sundays. So during the off season, when the Buccaneers are not kicking butt and taking names, then we're going to do shows there on Sundays from 1 to 5. We got one coming up
Raymond James Stadium?
No, at the Dallas Bull.
Oh,
I was just saying that when the Bucks aren't kicking butt and taking names on Sundays, we tried that. We did a show earlier this year in December, and the Bucks were playing the Giants that same day. Not so good with the attendance.
Yeah.
So you cannot battle the NFL or the Buccaneers. I learned that one the hard
you
way.
can't.
So in the off season, though, we'll be at the Dallas Bowl. Next one's February 6th. We have 13 really, really good fights already lined up. Every single one. Nobody has a losing record on my card. Not many people can ever say that. A lot of times you're just lucky to get whoever you get in there. I've worked really, really hard to vet these guys. We have top tier guys in every single matchup. We have a local rapper named Second Chance fighting Muay Thai on the card. We have a really up-and-coming young man named Aldo Dominguez, who's just very talented in kickboxing. Going to be making his MMA debut here pretty soon, his dad told me. So we're really excited for this fight card.
Love it. Everybody make sure you come out to the Dallas Bowl, February 6th.
Absolutely. We have a little bit of everything. You know, we have some purple belts doing combat jiu-jitsu. If you're not familiar with combat jiu-jitsu, it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu with open hand slaps. So you can use the front side or the back side of your hand to slap your opponent.
Wow.
Come on now. Doesn't that interest you?
She's
like,
I'd like to learn the
nope.
move. Maybe I can try that on Tom. What do you think, Tom?
Now, my daughter
Tom, I don't
over
agree.
here,
Smack.
she was doing some jiu-jitsu for a minute and then kind of trailed off, but we're about to get her back into it, right? Uh-huh. That's what she says. We'll see. So maybe
Most in shape people or the jiu-jitsu people are very.
And it's actually, man, everybody does it, from kids all the way to 50, 60-year-olds. I mean, it's a sport that any age can get into at any time. And to be honest, I would recommend jiu-jitsu to anybody. Anybody. If you're an 80-year-old grandma, I recommend jiu-jitsu. Seriously. Because in the world that we're living in, there's a lot of crazy people.
It doesn't wreck your body as much either.
Correct.
Right?
It doesn't wreck your body.
Yeah.
There's not a cardio component to it, although there is cardio, because whenever you grab another person, what is human nature? You hold your breath.
Yeah.
When you grab somebody, it's just human nature. So jiu-jitsu, you learn how to release and how to let your lungs continue working while you're grappling, while you're rolling. And jiu-jitsu was invented down in Brazil because rape is such a problem in that country. Mm-hmm. A family called the Gracies, everybody heard of Gracie
Yes.
Jiu-Jitsu, the Gracies got sick of their wives and sisters and mothers and daughters being raped and the police not doing anything about it. So they said, what's the one thing that every rapist and every victim always has in common? Clothes, at least in the beginning. So they said, let's start devising a way. Here, you get on the ground and open up your legs, and I'm going to get in between your legs, and we're going to try to figure out how can we prevent this from happening. And they literally spawned this entire martial art from rape defense for women.
I never knew that.
Absolutely. That's why jiu-jitsu, most of your moves, you're on your back, your legs are wrapped around your opponent. It's called being in the guard.
Yeah.
Almost all jiu-jitsu moves are based from the guard. So you're basically, a person has already gotten you pinned down and they're in between your legs trying to do something to you. You've got to know how to defend yourself. And that's, for my daughter, it's a requirement. It's not an option. She's going to know that when she goes to college, if a boy makes the mistake of thinking that she's easy prey, she's going to find out the hard way.
Right. Yeah, it's something we should all consider, sending our daughters to learn how to do that.
Well, and sons too. And sons too, man. I recommend it. Anybody that sees my car and it comes up to me, hey, Vigilant, what's that about? Where do you guys train at? You know, I correct them and I tell them that I'm a promotion, but I say, hey, get into martial arts, get into jiu-jitsu, get into something. Because once you know how to defend yourself, the problems seem to not find you. You know, before I could fight and I thought I was this street tough guy, I was always getting into fights. I was always getting into problems. It was funny. Once I learned martial arts and I learned how to defend myself and I could really kick people's butts, the problems stopped coming to me. They stopped finding me. Or if they did find me, as soon as I dropped into my stance, suddenly they didn't want those problems anymore.
Right.
You know? And that's what I recommend for anybody. Learn yourself a martial art and know how to take care of yourself, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah, it's great advice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wow.
Well, hopefully we do a follow-up. And when we do the follow-up, my daughter will have gotten a stripe on her belt by that point.
Yeah,
So.
well, I'd like to hear how that journey goes for her. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show and sharing your story. I think your story is going to help a lot of people.
Well, that's my hope and that's my
Yeah.
goal with all of this, man. I want people to really swallow the fact that you can be paralyzed from the neck down and told that that's it, it's over, your life is done. But it's up to you to not accept it, to create your own path, to stay the course, to keep your faith in God. Those are the 4 things that I had to really do, and I'm trying to master them.
I think that's great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for everything, and thank you to our audience for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a comment. I want to hear what you think about this podcast and YouTube show. Also, if you happen to be listening to the podcast, I would love for you to leave a review. Thanks again, and everybody have a great day.
Second Soul Studios is a full-service production studio with capabilities for photo, video, podcasting, editing, co-working, and more. Our photo video studio has a number of different backdrop choices and props to choose from. We also have a gourmet kitchen set, or if you're an upstart podcaster, you'll love our 4-person podcast studio. So what are you waiting for? Visit secondsoulstudios.com to book a tour today.